Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As someone who was responsible for the second largest law enforcement agency in my state as county executive before coming to this job, and as someone who has worked diligently with partners of both parties and continues to do so on criminal justice reform, I just want to speak for a moment about what the impact may be of this kind of tone, this kind of trajectory of attack on the record and the character of someone who, from what I read about her service and record, is demonstrably not a radical, pro-criminal Soros prosecutor. Both you and other members of the committee have entered a series of rebuttals, if I might, just on the specific point that Senator Kennedy was just walking through. The idea that Ms. Rollins declines to prosecute drug crimes, including for fentanyl, is just inaccurate. She has a demonstrated commitment to addressing the impacts of drug trafficking and violent crime in Suffolk County. And to be clear, I'll submit for the record a whole series of documents about arrests and indictments by the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, which she leads, for charges related to trafficking in fentanyl and heroin, distribution of fentanyl, possession of the substance with intent to distribute, and others. So in my view, it is a gross mischaracterization to say that she simply is pro-criminal and refuses to prosecute. The list of offenses, as discussed a moment ago by Senator Kennedy, is merely a rebuttable presumption within the office of the district attorney that you should consider whether there's an intent to distribute beyond mere quantity, whether it's a first offense. And I think in this era when we are trying, some of us, to move forward criminal justice reform, it makes sense to recognize that resources in law enforcement and in prosecution are limited, and reasoned judgments about when to dedicate those resources to prosecuting things like trespassing or destruction of property is a responsible way to manage a district attorney's office if the results, as you have already said, Mr. Chairman, are actually a reduction in crime. First. Second, over a long period of time on this committee, across our country, at the county and state level and the federal level, constant badgering, berating law enforcement leaders, prosecutors, for doing anything other than charging the highest level of offense is what got us into the place of being the country that incarcerated more of its citizens than almost any other country in the world, and where it had a distinct and disparate impact on black and brown communities. So I just think some of the tone, as well as the breaking of precedent and the way this is being highlighted, runs directly against what I was hoping to see this committee do in terms of making progress. Last, if someone were to be nominated for the position of U.S. Attorney from my state, I would hope my colleagues would listen to folks with relevant experience who might be indicative of a rejection of their record if it were as it's been mischaracterized. So let me just briefly cite from 3 of the many letters that are available in the record before us. One's from a graduate of both Harvard College and Harvard Law School, a seasoned and experienced leader in the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth. He was Assistant Attorney General under President Clinton. And he says, I've known Rachael for many years as a lawyer in the Boston area legal community, an appointee in our administration when I was governor, as a district attorney, and cites her reputation for integrity, earnestness, candor, determination, hard work, and as a smart and effective servant leader who has dedicated herself to the cause of criminal justice. That's from a Democratic governor, Deval Patrick. Fine. Another governor says, I respectfully submit this letter in support of the nomination of Rachael Rollins. Goes on at great length about their deep knowledge together, their work together, and he says the District Attorney Rollins, who he knows well, is perfectly positioned to serve as a positive change agent in federal law enforcement. I've spent many hours discussing these issues, and I'm paraphrasing, he's referencing how you strike the right balance in prosecution to actually fight crime and promote justice. She will be, he concludes, a great U.S. attorney. Now that's Governor Bill Weld. Some of you have heard of Governor Bill Weld. He was the U.S. attorney in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What president chose him? Ronald Reagan. He was the Assistant Attorney General of the United States for the Criminal Division. What president chose him? Ronald Reagan, hardly a radical Soros pro-criminal person. Last letter I'd like to paraphrase. This is a letter that is signed by 8 different leaders. My father was from Boston. The idea that these 8 leaders would sign a letter in support of someone who was pro-criminal defies reason. I just read at the top. By way of background, we have worked alongside DA Rollins during her entire tenure. We represent and lead the following law enforcement entities: the Boston Police Department, the Chelsea Police Department, the Massachusetts State Police, the MBTA Transit Police Department, the Revere Police Department, the Winthrop Police Department. I'll note that the State Police and the Boston Police are the 2 largest departments in the entire Commonwealth. They go through great detail about their long work with her. As is not surprising, they cite that sometimes they have disagreed. But they say, and I quote, "She respects us and the work we do to keep our communities safe. At a time when we are working to generate greater trust between all law enforcement and communities we serve, DA Rollins has proven she's committed to meeting this moment. We support her nomination for the position of U.S. Attorney and look forward to working with her in this role." I find that it strains credibility that someone who is a pro-criminal radical would win the support of the leadership of police departments large and small across the state and of governors, former governors of both parties who previously served in law enforcement leadership. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to supporting her nomination for U.S. Attorney.